right, so we're down to the official class stuff, and I want to mention several announcements. One is the job fair is coming up on Monday. You should tune in on Zoom. Those of you who are interested have probably already been talking to Steve Nelson, but even if you haven't, I highly recommend attending this thing so you see what jobs are available and what skills they need, and then you can plan. Yeah?
The job fair is actually this Thursday.
He moved it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad I know. Okay, Thursday you say, all right? I'll have to hunt for an email from him. He often changes it and I often don't get the message. Okay, Thursday. Okay, good. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Anyway, also, there are other announcements here. The cyber competition team is forming. I think most people that are interested have already signed up, but that's where you go. And the YSIS student chapter, quite energetic, Women in Cybersecurity, all the men can join too. It's a very good group, and they have a lot of useful information. In particular, this one, Last Mile, I just found out about from Tessa. These guys give money to students. They give them $500 all the time, and often much more. They say they have so much money, not enough people will take it. You just have to be in like the last year or two of your program, and it sounds pretty easy, and this page shows you how to fill out the form correctly. So if you're interested, you need some money, a few hundred or a few $1,000. Apparently these people are handing it out. I don't know why, but I wouldn't ask any questions as long as you get the money. I don't think it's coming from the Russian government or anything, but sounds good. All right, so we're down to lecture 4 here. And by the way, I found out just at the beginning of class that the autopsy quizzes were not on the Canvas, so I just put them on. They should have been there. Somehow our import this semester didn't work and all the quizzes were missing, and I've been slow to get them all fixed. So they're up, they're out, and I delayed the due date for those things for a couple weeks. All right, so we're going to talk about your lab to do investigations. Let me just check the Twitch and see. Whoa, comments in Twitch. Bitcoin is scarce, yeah. U.S. taxpayers. Most secure, yep, US dollar, yep. The charger was hacked last year at Whole Foods. Oh, that's rude. Yeah. Oh, and he was able to charge for free. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, that's a good one. I didn't hear of that. That's a good thing to know. All right. Anyway, interesting comments there. All right, so there are various government agencies and organizations that have made specifications for forensic work. I thought it was funny. They just asked me to give a talk at a conference of medical professionals, and they said I had to give official references to the research papers my work was based on, and it was all based on NIST standards. So I sent them NIST standards. We'll see if they take it. But anyway, because in this field, it's not any cutting research. They want me to tell them how to secure their medical office, and I say, well, the government has official documents telling you how to do it. That's where you get the truth. It's not a research paper. Anyway, so these organizations have been setting up the standards. American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors is a nonprofit organization that's made a guide. There are international standards like ISO, IEC. There's a group called the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence. And there are private sector computer forensic labs. And so there are various standards from standards bodies, and most people adhere to one of these standards. That's the best way to get someone to trust you. And I'm working for a critical infrastructure company, and they like NIST documents. If you're going to tell them to do something, you want to find a government document telling them this is the way to do it. That's the way to convince them. So there's a lot of private labs out there like Drive Savers. Drive Savers will do forensic work, and they will go to court and testify about it for you. Also, large companies have their own internal forensics, like I think it's Target. One of the big shopping stores, chain stores, the guy visited my class several times. He was their security expert, and they have their own DNA tester, they have their own security cameras, they have their own police, they have their own spies. They have a whole basic government inside, I think it was Kmart, inside Kmart. And they have murders, and they collect the fingerprint evidence and everything. It's amazing. It's basically a city. They have their own private police force inside the store. So anyway, major accounting firms can do this, and that's e-discovery, as I mentioned before. If you have a lawsuit, there's a step where you have to collect all the evidence, and that's essentially a forensic task. Dig through all these machines and find all the evidence about this case. So, all right. And you search through the electronically stored information like email and spreadsheets to find all the data relevant to the case. Publicly traded companies must maintain all electronic information for a specific period of time. Thanks to the Enron scandal, where their accountant, Arthur Anderson, was deleting data before they could seize it for the trial, and they said, well, we're going to make that illegal to delete the data before we get to see it. And the European ties have more regulations, of course. So e-discovery basically takes forensic investigators, IT staff, and lawyers, and that's true of pretty much all forensic investigations. You've got lawyers and you have IT issues. All right, so evidence acquisition. The fundamental task of a forensic examiner is to preserve the evidence. So you have something like a computer and you have reason to believe it's got evidence on it. Your first task is to preserve that evidence so it doesn't get lost. If people keep using the computer, it will get degraded. So you acquire the evidence, imaging it, putting it in a file like an NCASE file, E01, expert witness file, or something else, and reading email. Another task is an inventory. Just keep track of what you've got. And keep track of your images and store them in a safe way. And you have to keep track of it all. You have to have some kind of database or something of your files. And one thing I've been told by people who have become independent forensic examiners is you must, from the beginning, have a storage fee. Because you will store evidence for a case, and people will try to come back 10 years later and say, we have another case, another related lawsuit, what about that evidence? And so you may have to keep on to it, hold of it forever. And after a while, your safe will get full and your room will get full. So you ought to remember to be charging for storage. All right. And one solution is web hosting. I know this is what the FBI does. The FBI has a central office. They see stuff. They send it to a central office. The examiners there take images of the stuff and they put it in the cloud. And the examiner logs in and examines it in the cloud using FTK. That's how they do it. Police departments typically have a more sneaker-net proposal, sneaker-net technique. Anyway, you have a laboratory, of course. You have storage lockers to store your equipment and the evidence, and you have powerful workstations to work at. The workstations should be very powerful. You can get specialized ones like FRED, Forensic Recovery of Evidence Device. You need them to have a lot of storage, a fast processor, a lot of RAM, because it really takes hours and hours to image machines and to process the images you make. And you have to have, of course, lots of tools to open things up. And you can have typical IT tools to open up cases and replace hard drives and cables and stuff. And then specialized forensic devices, like Cellebrite is one of the big companies here from Israel that makes devices that can do a lot of acquisition of cell phones, even getting past the password. And Gray Key can do it too, if you're law enforcement. And there's other less famous ones down here, like Paraben and Blacklight. These are for Mac. Blacklight and Oxygen are for Mac. I think they've been acquired by each other now. But anyway, there's special software and hardware you can get. You can buy like a $10,000 phone acquisition kit that comes in a suitcase, and it's just got like 50 adapters and all these gadgets. And I've seen that at police stations, forensic labs, just to have a whole workbench full of stuff just for analyzing phones, because there are so many different phones. You have to have the right adapter and the right stuff. All right, and then you can have a field kit that's for going out to a location and acquiring data there. So you have sanitized hard drives. You want to have big hard drives, and you want them to have been erased. So you can go to court and say, I know there was nothing on this drive except the evidence. That's, in principle, you could have other files on there, but in practice, that is not a good practice. You want to defend yourself in court, that's the right thing to do. Get a powerful laptop, imaging device to image cell phones. Faraday bags are important, or people use a paint can. You need to block the radio signals from getting at the phone while you take it back to your lab. So you want to put it inside some metal container. Faraday bags will do it, or a paint can. You also have to have an external battery, because when you put a phone in a paint can, it turns the radio up to maximum trying to reach the tower. So it drains the battery faster. All right, and you can have X-Ways is one common bit of software to get. There are many others you can get. You might want a mouse jiggler. If you get the machine and you don't want it going, and it's awake, if it goes to sleep, it might require the password and lock you out with encryption. So you'll want to jiggle the mouse to keep it from going to sleep on you. And various forms, mainly any chain of custody is the main one, evidence bags and screwdrivers and cameras and all the usual stuff. So you can open chassis. And of course, you want to be able to take pictures of everything. That's really important. You take pictures of everything before you move anything or take anything apart. So you have a record of exactly how it was all set up, and then you move it and take it apart, and you need both of those things. All right, and you need an evidence locker. You need some room that is locked securely enough that you can go to court and testify that because I locked the evidence in the room, I am testifying that means nobody got in there. So it has to be a lock that you're secure enough about that you can testify to that in court, that you believe nobody went in there. Like say, some of my friends have safes, like a big old safe, because they want to be sure nobody's messing with the evidence. And cabinets for storing other things like your manuals and such. And hardware. You can have forensic disk duplicators. You can do it with software, but usually you buy a special device. You have a write blocker to make sure the evidence drive is not written to, and then just plug in another drive and press the button and it just automatically copies it over. That's the easiest way to do it. You can do it with software, but this is usually faster and easier and more expensive. Forensic examiners that begin working charge a lot of money, and they start spending it all on equipment. You can end up with an amazing amount of money spent on your equipment, getting bigger and faster and fancier stuff. SIM card readers, all right, and drives to put in the data you get. They're calling them harvest drives here. And of course, all the tools to open chassis and take things apart. Flashlights, cameras, and the evidence bags. Now, the evidence bags, if they are not Faraday bags, they don't block radio signals, but they just can be sealed so you can testify, I seized the thing and I protected it, so when I got it back to the lab, I made sure nobody had messed with it. So they had just seal it with tape or something. And if you go to DEF CON, Dark Tangent started a contest breaking through tamper-evident bags. They have acetone and things, and they practice opening these and going them back up, so it's not perfect. Yeah.
Just a question regarding the hardware.
Yeah.
Can I guess that the lifespan of the hardware of an investigator follows the lifespan of computer components, right?
I suppose, but it's only ever an estimate. The temperature changes it, how it's used changes it, and a lot of people that have really bought a lot of hard drives, for example, like Google, has found surprising things. That some of them break much sooner than they should, some of them last longer. One thing Google found is you can run them at a much higher temperature than people thought. So most people's data centers are chilled to where you have to wear like winter clothes. Google, they wear like a swimsuit and flip-flops. It's like 95 in there.
Okay, but that's for reason of wearing out. I mean,
Yeah.
the more you use, okay, the more
Yeah.
the component wears
Yeah.
out. But in terms of following the technology, I mean, if a new processor comes out, I assume I have my hardware, the hardware that I'm using for the investigation may not be appropriate anymore, so I have to update.
Well, possibly. I mean, a lot of it stays the same. But yeah, the main thing is that evidence drives keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So your old stuff won't be big enough. And of course, after a while, they go, like you have IDE-based drives, most computers don't have those ports anymore. So you just have to be as up to date as the stuff you're examining, but sometimes you're examining old stuff, and then you need the old equipment.
Okay.
Which is why, like I say, it costs $10,000 for the cell phone kit, because it has all these connectors for all these old cell phones. That's the problem with computers. If everybody just buy the newest stuff, your life would be easy. And that's why corporate investigators, it's easy because you buy like some standard, like the Windows machine that's only 5 years old and they're all the same. They all have the same hard drive. Then you don't need to have 100 different connectors. You just have whatever it takes to maintain the stuff you have. But the cops go into like a crime scene in a house and they find all this old stuff lying around and they have to try to get evidence off all of it. Yeah. Anyway, so you get, let me check for Twitch for comments. Is there a way to know if files are migrated out of a hard drive before the police confiscates the hard drive? That's difficult to understand. I mean, if people have been deleting files on a computer, then you can recover them when you do a forensic examination of the computer. You might find them in the recycle bin or something, but pretty much you have to get a hard drive image to do it. So I don't think you can. Now, there is one way you can do it, though, which is what happens in corporations. If you get Encase Corporate Edition, it costs about $100,000, you can image a drive over the network without the user knowing. And this is what has to happen in corporate investigations. Suppose you are at a corporation and somebody is embezzling money. Now, you might suspect the head of accounting or the vice president, and if you were to, like, make them go home and go in their room and cover it with evidence tape and seize their machine, they would get really offended and quit if they're innocent. You don't want to do that. You want to get the evidence without them even knowing. So you run, a case runs an agent on every machine, and you can sort of push an imager onto the machine, and it will image the hard drive during the day while they're working over the network. So you get all the evidence, and they don't even know it's happening. This is, of course, what bad guys do. They infect your machine, they steal data from your machine, you don't even know it's happening. The technology exists, and that's what you do in a corporate environment, and that could do what you're saying here. You could find out what they've been using and what they've been deleting without physically acquiring the drive. And this is possible if you're willing to put malware on the machine. Now, of course, Encase comes with some kind of agent that's already on there, and the open source tool to do the same thing is Velociraptor, and we'll use it later. Velociraptor can do the same thing. You can inspect a machine remotely over the network, And the main reason you do that is because you have a big corporation with machines all over the world, and you don't want to drive to each one of them and touch them. You want to do it from a central location. But it also has the side effect that you could, in principle, do it to someone's machine while they're using it, and they wouldn't really know. And sometimes that's what you want. It's a very good question. All right. Anyway, so virtual machines are very useful. If they have some kind of weird software on there, like an old word processor, the easiest thing to do would be to just make an image of their machine, run it in VMware, and then use their software to open their goofy files. And you, of course, SluiceKit and Autopsy or Ncase or FTK will be the kind of things you use to make images. Antivirus is important to have. All your images may have viruses in them or malware. That's why you don't want to put them on a machine you love. That's part of the evidence, but you should be aware of it. And then password cracking. It's in some of the projects, I think, already. Often files are protected by various levels of encryption and password, and forensic people do try to crack through them. You can't always do it, of course. A good encryption software can't be cracked, like BitLocker. But many people use weak things that can be cracked, like they put a password on a zip file, and that's not good unless you choose a long random password. If they choose a common password, you can break in, because you can just try millions of guesses on a local system. So JPEG is the most popular photo format, but there's also GIF, PNG, bitmap, and sometimes RAW. I haven't seen that much. I also see TIFF from cameras. These are common image formats. And JPEGs have metadata. They have the date and time the image was taken, frequently the GPS location, the name of the person that owns the software that's used, so it can really be quite valuable. It's not always in the images, but when it is, you get a wealth of useful information.
SVG is considered an image file?
JPG?
SVG.
SVG. Yeah, no, that's not really. Scalar graphics, that is the one that's made out of line drawing, vector graphics. And it is an image, but it's not a photographic image of anything. It's just like a logo or a drawing.
Okay.
So
because those are typically the image that Wikipedia uses.
that which one?
Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, well sometimes. If you have like a real photograph of like a human face, you would not use SVG. You use it for like cartoons and logos, because it's really just a mathematical expression of circles and lines. And so they're usually not that relevant, although you might have a case that depends on a copyright or something, but they're not like a photograph of a person. That's good. And I mentioned before, you can recover photos that have been deleted. What your forensic software does is it just looks for an unallocated block that contains a file header and a file footer, and it just assumes everything in the middle is the image, and most of the time that recovers the image. All right. And here's one of the tools. Adroit Forensics can do this. I know a couple of tools can do this. They can actually follow the blocks and remove the extra blocks in the middle. So even if your image is so big and fragmented, it'll reconstruct it. Most software like Ncase and Autopsy and FTK don't bother with that. They just assume it's not fragmented, which it usually isn't. So most of the images are okay, but some of the images come with like extra lines and junk in the middle of them, and you just don't worry about it.
Using some machine learning algorithm?
No, they have some way to do it. I think they just look at the intervening stuff and decide, there's an algorithm, just see if it fits in. And I don't quite know exactly how they work, but they do, yeah.
I'm asking this question because I think the book emphasizes the fact that, the tools that you have to use must be forensic. And in order to be forensic, there have to be tools that don't write information.
That's the idea, yeah.
So is this reconstruction a form of writing something?
No. No, we did it, and you take a hard drive image, you bring it into like Autopsy, and it will then look in there and find blocks that are not referred to in the master file table. So those are the unallocated blocks, and it will do file carving. It will look for headers and footers and try to reconstruct what files it can from there.
But it's still there, so it's like fishing.
That's right.
Retrieving.
And that's why you get things, they don't have a name or an owner or a date. They give them a name like unalloc_1234, but they will create, and then you can look inside and see what was inside those files, like a Word document or an image. All right. And of course, you need a lot of energy and an uninterruptible power supply. You don't want the power going out while you're making an image. And there's an issue of fire safety. And like I say, a budget. A strong computer lab is a large expense. All right, and you have to restrict access to the lab. This is super important. How can you go to court and say, I know that nobody messed with the evidence, if you just let random idiots wander into your forensic lab? It's a secure space like a server lab. You have to have a lock. It would be nice to have like a mag stripe and a camera, so you really know who's going in there. And you can testify, we made sure that nobody else went in there. And you protect your data your data. Don't let it be accessible over wireless, and have physical security so people aren't sneaking in there. And audit people who access the lab. You want to make sure they're people who have a record that can be defended in court. You do background checks and stuff, you want to have reasonable evidence. Otherwise, you leave a hole. They'll say, well, you have a criminal on your staff, he's probably falsifying the evidence. You don't want that. So you extract the evidence from a device. DD will copy it and grab these various tools that can just copy data. DD is the most common. All right, let me check for comments on the Twitch. No good, no new ones. All right, so see if I can find my way back to where I need to be. All right, so financial fraud, you may have a lot of credit card numbers and such, so it's sort of interesting to know the numbering system of credit cards. There's something, there are different brands start with different numbers, and then they have a range of numbers in the middle and stuff. There's certainly, I've just looked this up if I ever wanted to know it. And then there's check fraud. Checks have numbers on checks, and there's a pattern for these things too, telling you what part of the country the bank is in. Again, that's something I just look up if I needed it. Skimmers are a big deal. Brian Krebsbank's a big deal, expert on these things. Skimmers, you buy them on crime forums. It's a fake credit card thing. You put it at a bank or any ATM in front of the real ATM, and now when they stick in their mag stripe, it makes an image of it, as well as the second image that the bank sees. And so people who know about this, they'll go to their ATM and they'll like yank and pull on it before they use it to see if any part is loose, because they make them so they'll look exactly like the real one. And some of them are pretty cool. Some of them have storage device locally. Some of them send it to radio to a car dice nearby. A while ago, there were gas stations, and what they were doing was taking apart the gas pump and putting it inside, and it would then send radio to a car park nearby, so there's no clue for you at all. Now, of course, these days I use Apple Pay. Apple Pay is much safer. Then you're not giving it a number they can reuse, you're not sticking any mag stripe in the slot, and I'm not aware of any skimmer that works with Apple Pay. So that's one sense in which it's safer. Anyway, all right. And they can be complicated. And then, of course, there's steganography. Some people hide data on a machine, and there are a lot of ways to do it. TrueCrypt actually had an old encryption software that's still around, although it's no longer maintained, had the ability to make a hidden partition on your hard drive and make 2 layers of encryption. So your hard drive is encrypted, but if the police take you in and they demand a password, you can give them a password, but that password will only decrypt the innocent part of the drive, and the secret part is hidden again behind another password. That kind of thing. Steganography is another way where you hide data in the wrong kind of file. You have something like a movie and you hide a text file inside there. That's steganography, and there's a lot of ways to do it. This is what Anna Chapman, the Russian spy, used when she was in America. She had a steganography system, and in principle, they can be almost impossible to crack. You can have like an image, and you can just have some pattern, like you take every 15th bit, and the lowest bit of red is the hidden data, and you just have to add all those up and construct something out of it. And you can have any pattern of bits you want, so it's almost impossible to detect unless you can find the original image and the altered image and compare them, and then you can get some clue what's going on. But most people just use standard software, and in Anna Chapman's case, she fled the country because they were on to her, and she left behind her computer, and they found the program that did it. So that makes it easy.
Does steganography refer only to digital information or even paper information? For example, money.
I think they only used the word for digital information, but secret writing has been around forever. Right. Where you'd have like a page of text and then you write on it with lemon juice or something.
You know that on dollar bills, I think from $5 up, there are those stars that
there's
you
hidden,
keep the photocopying software not to photocopy.
Well, there's like a bunch of hidden clues. You can tell counterfeits, that's right. Yeah. And there's always been secret writing down through the ages where there's a secret way to write on something where it's not obvious, but there's a trick to reveal the hidden writing. Like the people that say Francis Bacon wrote Shakespeare, because they look at the extra curly cues in the letters and they find patterns. Because Bacon did do encryption, and he had a Bacon cipher was a binary encryption scheme where with 5 bits you can encode a letter. And so people look at Shakespeare's original manuscript and they find these suspicious little curly cues and they find patterns in it and claim that Bacon wrote Shakespeare. And that's early. Secret writing has been big down through the ages, where you hide data to where you don't even know there's extra data in there. They did this one time at DEF CON. I applied, I think, for the DEF CON Capture the Flag contest qualifier, and in the introductory email, looked like spam, so your spam filter would throw it away. They hid the message in spam. And there was a tool at DEF CON to hide your message in spam. It would just have sentences about Viagra and stuff, and there'd be pattern, and you could decode a message from that if you had the right software. So anyway, check for comments here. Is Google Pay safe now like Apple Pay? I think Apple Pay is safer. Google Pay is probably about as good if you have an expensive Google phone. But there are cheap Android phones that only emulate the secure part. Apple Pay keeps your credit card number in a secure element, which is a special hardware chip like a trusted platform module, and that's probably the best. Some Android phones just use an emulated secure element that's not as secure. So I keep an RFID blocking card in my wallet. I wonder if it'll actually block the transmission. As far as I know people that have wallets that have like a layer of tinfoil, so your cards can't be read from the outside. I don't think one card can block it. You'd need to have it surrounded by metal. And
Like this one? Yeah, I bought this because I got cloned my cards a couple of times.
Oh.
San Francisco.
Yeah, you put it in some kind of metal case. That would do it, yeah. But this guy says an RFID blocking card. I don't think a card on one side would do it. Maybe it would block radio signals from one side, but if you put it in the wrong way, it would, I mean, I guess you could put it on the right side so it's the outside of your body and your body blocks, but you'd better just get a wallet that's got tinfoil all the way around. They sell those at various, I've seen them selling at security conferences and stuff. All right, so I'm going to stop this recording. Oh, it's not Cahoots. Let me do the Cahoots. That's what I should do. Somehow I often forget them in this class. All right. Oh yes, I guess CNIT is bad. Yeah, where it's constantly ringing. I've got some of it. It can be very annoying. Mine isn't too bad, but some people can drive them nuts. Everybody. I'll wait till the end of the song. All right. Which law requires companies to preserve electronic information? Sarbanes-Oxley is the only law on this list. By the way, this is the Security Exchange Commission, which Elon Musk hates, and he said, I call them suck Elons. That's what he thinks they are. He totally ignores what they order him to do. Just like Donald Trump, he just ignores the law, does whatever he wants, and keeps on getting away with it. But anyway, Sarbanes-Oxley is the law. This is like the Special Working Group for Digital Evidence, and this is the European privacy law. That's the American law, requiring companies not to delete information if they have a reasonable expectation that they're about to need it for a lawsuit. All right, the hardware device that only law enforcement can get. The gray key can break through the pin on an iPhone. It goes in the power adapter and it can try like 9 guesses and then reboot the phone or something and then try 9. So eventually it can try a lot of combinations, and it can break at least 4-digit pins in some reasonable amount of time. I don't know if it can do 6 digits or the most modern phones, but it's a pretty common device in law enforcement, at least a few years ago. Maybe they've got modern versions, I'm not sure. So which one is essential for a forensic lab? You need a write blocker. These are particular brands of devices. You don't exactly need them. You can have other ways to do it, but you need a write blocker. You can't do any proper forensic acquisition of data without a write blocker. Working without a write blocker is so unprofessional that you will be humiliated in court. I mean, that's ridiculous. And they're expensive too, very annoying. All right. All right, which Linux tool extracts evidence from a device? That's DD, disk duplicate, or data duplicate, or something like that. Anyway, that's the tool you use. Oops, not that one. This one. Tell me who they are. I don't think that's a real name. Might be.